Have you ever had a really bad trial lesson?
Not recently, thankfully, but I'm sure I've had many in the past. I've had some that, they're just like they're having the lesson in really inappropriate places, like in a noisy cafe or something.
Yeah, that sucks. That's tough.
Probably in the beginning, I had some awkward ones, right, where I was embarrassed and shy, and I didn't know what to do. But I don't really remember. I think I've kind of blocked them out of my memory.
Sure. I'll be honest, I've had like a good handful of really bad ones.
Yeah.
Like for example, oh man, I don't even know if I should tell the story. So okay, I've brought it up. I've brought it up now. Now I have to tell it.
Yeah.
The girl comes and starts the lesson, but I can't hear her, and she's wearing a dress. She's wearing like quite like as if she was going out for a nice meal or something. So I was a little bit surprised to see that, but I couldn't hear anything. So I'm playing with the audio settings, and all I said on the mic was, "I can't hear you." I'm looking at the settings, so I play through the settings. I find the audio, then I come back to the call, and she's naked.
What?
So Michael, thank you so much for coming and joining me today.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm really happy to be here.
So you're also an English teacher like myself. So how did the journey all begin for you?
So it's a little bit random, I guess. So like when I left sixth form, which is like kind of high school in the UK, I suppose. I worked as a gardener for a few years. That was like my passion, gardening, being outside. Yeah,
I can see you have your plants behind you as well.
Yeah, well, I can't really be proud of that. I mean, this one recently, kind of a big chunk of it died, so that's why it's looking a bit bare. But,
oh man.
Yeah, and then like it was a good job, but it's kind of every day outside, no matter what the weather, no matter time of year. It's quite a physical job, obviously. And after a few years, I just got a bit fed up. Like, it's good as a hobby, but maybe not so much as a job, in my opinion. So I kind of went to travel to clear my head a little bit, and I spent some time thinking about what I wanted to do. And I came upon the idea of teaching because I've always loved languages. I don't know why. It's just been a passion of mine. And by chance, the only language that I knew that well was English. So I thought I could kind of explore a path down there. So since then, it's a longer story. I've got CELTA and TEFL, things like that, and that's basically what led me here in really short words.
That's amazing. So you said you went traveling. Where did you go to?
I went mostly to Japan. It was my first ever solo trip, and I really went in at the deep end and went to Japan for 1 month.
Wow.
And then like Hong Kong and Taiwan as well. So it's a really amazing trip. It was very tough because I'd never traveled alone before, but it was nice to be alone and just think about where I wanted to go in the future. Kind of like a gap year.
So did you start teaching when you were abroad, or was that once you came back?
Once I came back, yeah. It was great. When I came back, I still had a part-time job, and I was starting the teaching in my spare time. Yeah,
that's awesome. So with the teaching, you mentioned that you started on Preppy. For myself, my plan was to do the TEFL and then become an English teacher, but it was getting to a point where just I needed to make some money. I'd been unemployed for too long. I'd been living off of my furlough money because of COVID, and I thought, okay, I need to start. So I opened the account, and honestly, the teaching on Preppy, it just kicked off like crazy. Within like maybe 2 months or 3 months, I was working 50 hours a week, and I wasn't even qualified yet as a teacher. And I didn't actually qualify as a teacher until like a year later. So what was it like going on Preppy for you? How long was it before the business really kicked off and you thought this is an avenue you wanted to really invest yourself in long term?
Yeah, it's hard to remember. I've got terrible memory, but I think it was very similar to you in that I didn't, I feel like maybe it's a good piece of advice for any career, right? Like before you get too invested in qualifications, you want to kind of dip your toe in the water and see how it is. So yeah, I think there was a few months where I was trying it out as kind of a, I guess italki would call it, like a community tutor rather than a professional teacher. And I feel like it probably took off a little bit more slowly compared to you. You know, at the beginning, I might have been getting one or two or three lessons a day, but that was quite a lot because I had two other jobs in addition to that. So,
Oh, wow, so you were busy.
I was fine with that. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think Preply gave like kind of promoted me more because you know how you can set your availability. Like I set my availability from 10 a.m. till 10 p.m. 7 days a week. So I think because of that, it kind of kicked off a bit faster. Whereas if you're working two other jobs, maybe there was less availability.
That's a good point. Yeah, I guess you kind of got to get familiar with the algorithms, don't you, and know how to get high up.
How excited? Do you remember your first student?
Yes, I do. And actually, it was the only student I've ever got from Craigslist. Because when I started, I put my adverts everywhere, like every website, every place. So Craigslist is like a place where you can post or anything, right? Like job listings or whatever. It was the youngest student I ever had as well. I've never gone that young since. He was 4 years old from China.
Oh, well, that's really young.
Yeah. And I found it really tough.
I can imagine. Yeah, like for me, the same. It's like my toughest students have been the young ones. Like the youngest I think I've had is maybe like 8 or 9. But I find teaching kids so exhausting.
I think the hardest part, I don't know if you agree, is when they don't want to learn. I think
they want to be your friend.
Well, hopefully, I can't always say that's the case for me, but
okay.
Yeah, like sometimes they just really don't want to be there. Their parents are forcing them, and it's so tough. It like I feel like my job is to teach them, but to make them want to learn is a whole nother task.
Yeah. You know, that's one of the things about kids is that they're not paying for their lessons. They don't have a goal. I was talking to one of my students earlier about one of my experiences teaching a kid, and the child's mum would just leave the kid in the house for an hour by themselves. So I was alone with this kid for like 1 hour. It was basically babysitting, and the mum thought instead of a babysitter, she'd get an English teacher. So maybe the kid can learn something. So I'm supposed to be teaching this kid English. And what he would do is, again, he was like 7, 8, 9, really young. He had a projector and the room would be dark and he would project a massive shot of me on his wall. So I would be watching the screen, but I'm seeing myself as this giant on his wall. And he's like sitting in his bed, just looking up at me, and see if like I ever like move my hand or something, he'd go like this. Like as if I'm gonna, like as if I'm gonna hit him or something, and like as if like I'm a giant and I can just pick him up.
Was he joking?
Yeah, he was joking. Okay. Like, you know, he would encourage me to do it. Like he wanted me like to pretend to hit him so he could fall over and stuff, which was fun and games. But obviously with adults, it's like I want to learn English because I want to pass IELTS, or I want to learn English because I want to move abroad, or I want to get a job promotion or something like this. But with kids, that doesn't exist. So for that, it's harder to teach them.
I completely agree. And I'm moving more towards that these days. I'm trying to kind of tailor my, website and everything to attract more adults, because I think that the happiest moments for me is when I'm helping someone kind of make a big change in their life. That, as you said, it might be immigrant, like going abroad or getting a new job somewhere. And I love the feeling that I might have had a small part to play in helping them like make that positive change.
Sure.
Yeah. You can see the difference in their life, like a tangible difference.
Yeah. You said that you had a fascination with languages. So what other languages have you learned?
I'm still learning Japanese and Chinese, and I'm also recently started learning Cornish, which, for those who don't know, is like the Celtic language of where I'm from in the UK. It's Cornwall.
I didn't know Cornwall had its own language.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I take it. Is it, for example, here in Scotland, we used to have Gaelic or Gaelic, but it's like almost an extinct language. How about Cornish? Do people still speak it?
Cornish is, I think, probably the least spoken Celtic language.
Really?
So it's very similar linguistically to Welsh, but maybe there's like no one speaks it as a first language. Maybe there's like less than 1,000 people that know it as a second language.
Really?
So it's very rare. so that I kind of feel I want to be that one of those people, so I can feel that, you know, pride, I guess. I don't know.
So see a language which is so kind of like it's not really well known, it must be really hard to find the resources to learn it.
At the moment, I've just been doing like, there's one course on Memrise, a flashcard website where I've been doing that, and there's quite a lot of good stuff there. There's also a lot of books, because I think it was more popular, say 100 years ago. So there's some like very old books with grammar and stuff, which I'm planning to get later. And there's like, the more you, I'm sure, well, I imagine you might know, the more you kind of dive into a language, you start to see it everywhere. And even a language like Cornish, like just the other day, so I'm in London now, there was like a plaque commemorating like failed Cornish rebellion from 500 years ago. And the sign is actually written in Cornish. So I was like trying to decipher it as much as I could. But
were you successful?
I mean, I understood like we and they. And
okay,
it.
gotcha.
So, yeah,
gotcha.
not really.
Okay, yeah, well, I mean, that's something. That's something. When I started learning Arabic, and I would hear people, for example, like I used to work in retail, and customers would come in, and if they could speak Arabic, I'd want to communicate with them in Arabic. But the thing is, like, you know, like let's say a customer with a slightly darker complexion comes in, I don't want to start just assume they speak Arabic and try to speak to them in Arabic, because they might not take to that too well. So I'd try and kind of elicit it out of them, or if they're with someone and they're talking in their native language, I'd be listening really closely. And if I heard like, you know, an Arabic preposition, or like hada, hadihi, you know, anything like this, I know, that's Arabic. And then I could start the conversation. Because there was a time that I tried to speak Arabic with a customer who spoke, I think he was Pakistani, I think he spoke Urdu, and he just was looking at me like, what? Like, I'm not Arab.
You don't want to offend anyone.
Yeah. Just like from the bottom of my heart, I just wanted to practice some language. I just wanted to communicate with people, but it can be taken the wrong way, I guess. But on to, you said you speak Chinese and Japanese, not easy languages.
Yeah, I'm not good at them. I wouldn't say speak.
Okay.
Yeah, they're definitely tough. Yeah, but I find I kind of, I don't know. I sometimes like push back on the idea of like a language being difficult, because I generally say it's only difficult if you don't enjoy it. Like if you enjoy it and you're passionate about it, I think you can do anything pretty much, right? Like to me, Japanese has never seemed like a chore, because I love learning every day. So it's never been hard, you know.
I think learning a second language actually makes you a better teacher.
Yeah, totally.
You become more empathetic of your students' problems as well. I've see, like before I learned Arabic, I was like, I kind of had this this fear about learning languages, because like years and years ago, one of my friends tried learning Arabic, and I said to him, "What do you know?" And he said, "I learned the word for couch. I learned the word for fork. I learned the word for curtain. I learned the word for wheel," you know, and I was like, how on earth are you going to learn a language like that? And I thought that was what it was like to learn a language. I just assumed you learn one word, then another word, then another word, then eventually you can make sentences. But see, that it was an unstructured way of learning, in which, you know, the only benefit that would have is if you go into like, I don't know, an Arab shop, and the guy says, "What do you want?" You say, "Couch." "I want top." But really it wouldn't help you with conversation. But I found, see, having like a system, like for example in English, you know, you learn these first couple of tenses, you know, you learn how to introduce yourself, you learn, let's say, you know, 10 verbs, 10 adjectives, and like 10 nouns, common ones, and then instantly you can already have conversations. You can talk about objects and describe yourself and other people, and it doesn't really take that long to get to that point, especially if you're enjoying the process. But I guess when students come to you and they're intimidated about learning a language, or they think it's going to be a long and difficult process, how do you kind of assuage those doubts?
I mean, to be honest, I don't get many students like that. Maybe it's just the kind of a natural bias, because those who pay for lessons with me generally are more motivated anyway.
Sure.
But I do kind of get messages like that on social media and stuff. And my general advice is just to find something you like about it, rather than focus on like the final destination. Because I think in language there isn't one, right? There's never going to be a point where you're like, right, I'm finished now, I'm done.
Yeah, of course.
Unless you're doing an exam, maybe. But yeah, I think you have to learn to enjoy the journey. So that's what I try to do in my lessons. And sometimes in a trial lesson, a student might say, how many lessons do I have to have before I'm done?
I heard that question a lot. I hear that question.
Oh, do you really?
Regularly. Yeah.
So what would you say? How would you respond to that then?
Well, this is an answer that I hate, because when I ask people, like for example, PTs or something, how long until I can lift this, or how long until I can do this, they always give me the same response, and I hate it. They say, how long is a piece of string?
I knew you'd say that. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't like that answer. I don't like when people say that answer to me, but it's true. I mean, the variables are how much time are you going to put in? How good of a learner are you? Like some people learn quicker than others. Myself, I honestly consider myself as probably a slower learner, but in my advantage, I'd say I'm persistent. I'll put in 30 minutes a day or an hour a day, and it's having the end goal and making regular steps, even if they're small but incremental. So I think if you have a learning system, organization, sometimes like you get a student and you're just not really on the same wavelength as them, but sometimes you get a student and you really have a bond quite fast. And I find, these are all variables which will affect how quickly the student learns. It's how much they like the teacher, how much they trust in the plan, how regular they are out of class, and just how good they are at learning. So it's all of these things in consideration. We don't know that, so it's really hard to give an answer.
Yeah, for sure, definitely.
Yeah, so how would you answer that question?
What was the question? My mind just went totally blank then.
Yeah, so for example, when a student says, how long will it take? How many lessons will it take?
Yeah, so I'm with you again now. So I always like to address that in the trial lesson, right? I don't want to give them any false hope or misunderstandings. So normally sure. I would say, in my view, language learning is a continuing process. If you have like a specific goal, then we can have a specific plan. Like if you say, I want to be able to travel to England and get by, just about. It's a fairly specific goal. And I could say maybe then based on your English, if you practice this much in the week, it might take this much time. But generally, I would say language doesn't really work like that. And my kind of style of teaching doesn't really suit that kind of goal. That this is how long it takes. So sometimes they might understand and continue, and sometimes they might find another teacher who thinks differently than me. But
sure,
I try to make it clear that of my perspective, so they don't book more lessons without understanding my teaching method, I guess.
Yeah, sure. I mean, see that like going to England and getting by, it's not really a specific goal. Like if we wanted to talk about, you want to have this conversation at the shops, or you want to make friends, you can role play those situations and understand these are your problems. You're missing this vocabulary, you're missing this grammar, or this is messy. But sometimes students, they aren't really clear about what they want. And I think if you and I, like if we ask the student the right questions and you really understand what the student wants, it's easier to help that student.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, it's hard to think of a specific goal, as I said, unless it is an exam. Yeah.
Have you ever had a really bad trial lesson?
Yeah. I mean, not recently, thankfully, but I'm sure I've had many in the past. I've had some that, they're just like, they're having the lesson in really inappropriate places, like in a noisy cafe or something.
Yeah, that sucks. That's tough.
I don't think they realize maybe the sounds around them. Maybe they can ignore it because they've got headphones, but for me, it's so loud and I can hardly hear them and things like that. But no, generally, I think most of my students have been amazing. Probably in the beginning, I had some awkward ones, right, where I was embarrassed and shy and I didn't know what to do. But I don't really remember. I think I've kind of blocked them out of my memory,
Sure. I'll be honest, I've had like a good handful of really bad ones.
Yeah.
Like, for example, oh man, I don't even know if I should tell the story. So, okay,
I mean,
I've
you
brought it
have to,
up.
come on.
I've brought it up now. Now I have to tell it.
Yeah, yeah.
So this was, I have my Instagram page where I was like the most active with my Instagram content, and a girl reaches out to me, and sometimes I'd reach out to the followers and I'd say questions like, "Hey, how's your English learning going? How, what are your English goals? How long have you been trying to achieve those goals? Through which methods have you tried to achieve those goals?" And then if I felt like they were the kind of student that I'd want to have, I'd invite them for a Zoom call. And I'd say, okay, let's just catch up over a 15-minute Zoom call, and I'll see if I can offer you any advice. And then from there, I'd transition them to Preppy or to italki or whatever. So I do that with this girl once, right? And she comes on to it wasn't on Zoom. She wanted to do it on Google Drive or Google Hangouts, I think it's called. And I hadn't used it before. Not really an important detail, but I'm just recalling the whole thing. But anyway, because I was on a new one, like, you know how on Zoom, for example, in the bottom left, there's like mute and stop video. And I know that if I can't hear you, I go to the video icon and I go to the audio icon and I can choose a different audio output and make sure my headphones are selected. So I know how to use Zoom, but Hangouts, I didn't know how to use like that. So anyway, the girl comes and starts the lesson, but I can't hear her. And she's wearing a dress. She's wearing like quite like as if she was going out for a nice meal or something. So I was a little bit surprised to see that, but I couldn't hear anything. So I'm playing with the audio settings, and all I said on the mic was, "I can't hear you. I'm looking at the settings." So I play through the settings. I find the audio. Then I come back to the call, and she's naked.
What? Did she know that you were there?
Yeah, she knew I was there. She invited. I think she was hosting the room because I'd never used Hangouts before. So afterwards, I just left. I left the call immediately. As soon as I saw that, I left. It wasn't why I wanted to be there, right?
Yeah,
and then she started hurling this abuse at me through the messages, asking me if I was a homosexual or something like that. This is the kind of messages
so she wanted you to see. I see. I thought it was just like an accident.
No, she wanted me to see this.
Wow.
Well, obviously, I'm there to teach. I didn't want to get involved with something like that.
Yeah.
Plus, more so, it could have been like they could have been recording it or anything, and it was just, I came between classes to teach someone, so I left immediately. But yeah, that was one of my that was one of my really awkward ones. But there was others that there have actually been Preppy trial lessons where another one was this student comes and she says she wants to learn RP English, and she's lying in bed. She's a native English speaker, by the way. She was like Indian or something, but she'd been living in America for like her whole life, pretty much, or most of her life, so she could speak English absolutely fluently. But she wanted to speak with the kind of the Queen's English with an accent. She says, "Can you teach me that?" And I was like, "Well, I'm not an accent coach, and I'm not an acting coach, so to speak like that." I was like, I can give you tips, but another thing is, I'm not even from London. I'm from Scotland.
Yeah.
So like the way you ask questions and you try and work out what do you really want. You ask as many questions, and once you've asked all these questions, you think, okay, that's what they want, and this is how I can tailor what I do to help them get what they want. So I'm asking all the questions, and I kind of figure from her, she just wants to role play. All she wants to do is have this trial lesson where we do a role play and we speak like really posh. And I'm not kidding, for 1 hour, this woman's lying in her bed with her phone like this, looking at her, and I'm just talking to her like, "Hello, how are you doing there?" We had 1 hour just talking to each other like this, and I'm going through this thinking, what on earth is going on?
Yeah, I've had that too. It's so weird. It's hard to hear your own accent, but probably people would say mine is closer to RP than yours.
Yeah, of course.
But it's still not, because I'm not from London either. But sometimes people ask me, "Oh, can we do RP, or can we do this accent?" And I always say, like, I'm going to do my accent because,
of course,
I'm going to teach you the pronunciation if you like, but it doesn't feel right faking an accent to talk, because I think that's not
Yeah, I agree with you.
It wouldn't be real, would it?
I completely agree with you. Totally agree with you.
That's funny though. Yeah, I've had some awkward ones. I think a lot of them, as we said, were with children, because I don't know, they often don't feel awkward like adults do. They're often like the most confident ones in my experience. And
sure.
They don't respect that it's a lesson sometimes. And I'm happy to like look at their toys or their books and, turn that into a conversation activity. But sometimes it will just be like, a young girl going, oh, let me show you my gymnastics. I can do a handstand like this. Maybe we focus on the lesson now, because I'm thinking, what if your parents walk in? What are they going to think if you're like,
doing handstands and you're supposed to be teaching English? It's hard. Like, so you're on Preppy. Are you on there's like a Facebook community page for all the Preppy teachers?
I haven't used Preppy in like 4 years maybe. So not anymore, no.
Okay, well, there's like a community group, and some people complain about when the parent is present. Some of the teachers don't like the parent to be present because they think it's kind of awkward. They're trying to teach, but they feel like someone's watching them. But honestly, like I've never done a class where the parent has been there. And see, when the parent's not there and they're just left with me, the kid always misbehaves. And I think I wish there was a parent here to like, because I don't want to discipline your kid. I just want to teach your kid English. I don't want to say to your kid, hey, sit down. It's enough. Once it got like that, one time it got really bad. And I had to go, hey, that's it. I'm calling your mother. He's being a really bad boy. Take away his PlayStation. She's like, no. That's the only time I've had to do that. But
I've never done that. But I feel that desire. But I always want to be like the kind of the fun teacher, like the fun uncle kind of person. I don't want to be like. But yeah, I agree. Like when the parent is there, the lesson is so much better, because they're more well behaved. The only thing that does sometimes get in the way is where they are translating everything. I don't want to ask them to stop, but I think it's best if I think sometimes they don't realize how much their kid can do alone, but they translate before they have a chance to think about it. That's the only thing I would advise parents not to do.
Yeah, I completely agree. So what kind of level of students are you working with currently?
It really kind of the whole range, but I would say mostly probably the same level as the listeners to this show, I guess, kind of higher intermediate.
Sure.
So ones where we can have like maybe a deeper conversation about different things. I just find it more interesting for me, and it's more fun to kind of vary the lessons a bit more, make it interesting. Because I think when the teacher enjoys it, it shows, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Is there like one particular or a couple of particular ethnicities you find yourself primarily working with?
Oh, it's really weird. It goes in like phases. So there was like a while where I had like a Brazilian phase where like 90% of my students were Brazilian.
Wow.
And then another one with lots of Portuguese and lots of Japanese. I don't know why it always seems to go in these patterns. These days, a lot from, I think there's always going to be a lot from Russia. There's a lot from Russia and China. Those are the big ones. Russia, China, Japan.
This whole time, I've never had a Japanese student.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Japanese students have never come to me. The other ethnicities you mentioned, Brazilian, I've not had a lot of Brazilian, a couple, but China, Russia, Arabs, a lot of those. But Japanese, I've never had.
Why do you think that is? Is it the platform, maybe?
Well, I was about to say maybe it's the time zone, but you're in the same time zone as me, and you get Japanese students, so.
They're always up very late, though.
Yeah, maybe. Honestly, I have no idea. Maybe my profile or whatever is just not optimized to them. I mean, maybe you're slightly more appealing because you can actually, it probably says on your profile that you speak some Japanese.
That might be it, actually, yeah, because I mean, if there is anyone Japanese listening, there are many Japanese who have amazing English, and my students all have amazing English by chance. But I think generally the level of English in Japan is not that high. So I think a lot of Japanese probably prefer to have someone who knows a bit of Japanese too. I'm only guessing, but maybe that's it.
So let's talk about Japanese students, because I don't know too much about them because I've not really dealt with Japanese students. But see, like, for example, see when I work with Arab students, I find that regardless of their proficiency level, Arabs tend to have like a kind of handful of regular problems. Every student has their specific problems, but like a group will have, like, because of their alphabet, they will have specific problems when they go from Arabic to English or from Chinese to English. So, for example, with the Arabs, in the Arabic alphabet, there's no letter P.
Mm-hmm.
So, but they have a letter, so it's alif, ba, and that letter ba, they use that instead of P. So it comes out like pizza, barking, they use Peter Parker. They use a ba instead of the letter P. Or another one they struggle with I've found is like the, them, theirs, and instead it comes out like the letter z, the car, the parking, the house, just because of their accent. So with, for example, those students, there's particular pronunciation drills we need to work on, phonetic skills, just so they can pronounce things in a more neutral way. How about when you're dealing with Japanese students? Do you find there's any particular recurring either grammatical problems or recurring pronunciation problems with them?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's really interesting. As you said, you notice the patterns, and I think often it's based on their native language, but sometimes it's like the school system as well, which might be doing something wrong. In Japan, I mean, the famous one is like L and R. That's always tough because
I think Chinese have that as well.
Yeah, I think maybe to a lesser extent, because I'm not going to talk about Chinese language. I'm going to embarrass myself, but like in Japan, the L and the R is kind of like the same letter, like probably like similar in Arabic to the P and the B. So another thing that Japanese tend to struggle with is, well, many words, I guess they're kind of loan words where they're English words, but they say it in the Japanese alphabet. And often when they learn these words in school, they're using the Japanese pronunciation. If I can think of an example. Well, like, for example, a microphone I'm looking at right now, we can call it a mic in English. And it's the same in Japanese, but in their alphabet, it would be like maiku.
Gotcha.
So little things like that, well, they'll often add a vowel at the end of a word because pretty much all Japanese letters end in a vowel.
Yeah. Italians have that as well, but they add like pizza, pasta. Or I was doing phrasal verbs with an Italian student, and we're doing like up phrasal verbs, pick up, put up, sit up, stand up. And the student kept saying, stand up, put up, so that was a really tough, a really recurring one. And when I get an Italian student who doesn't do that, I know that they've probably consciously actually put effort into fixing that, because their language just has those that way of speaking, which makes it harder it makes that part of English harder. And I guess, like, for you and I as English speakers, like if we were to try and speak this language or that language, you'd probably see that you and I have similar difficulties just because of our native language. Yeah,
exactly. Like the Japanese R, I really struggle with, because it is like a combination of L and R in English and a little bit of D as well. And we don't have the sound. For example, one word is like rui. Yeah, that's pretty good. Yes. Okay. I mean, I'm not good at it either, but that means like a type or like sort for that word. But it's not R, it's not L, it's somewhere in the middle.
Okay, I see.
So it's the same in reverse, isn't it?
Yeah, it's see, with pronunciation, when students come to me with pronunciation problems, like pronunciation, to fix it, it's a lot of repetition. And usually I try, like, see if I can help the student with grammar or with vocabulary. I'll just give them pronunciation drills, and I'll tell them, you should just do this in your house, because there's no point me like you saying this 200 times in front of me, because the thing is, you need to say this like 500 or 600 times until it's right. It's like, doing bicep curls. You might as well do that in your own time. I don't want you, like a personal trainer. If a personal trainer, you're paying a personal trainer to stand in front of them and do bicep curls, he's stealing your money.
Well, yeah, like you could teach them once or twice, like this is the
until
technique.
They've got it right. Sure.
Yeah.
Or what I'll do is, there's going to be a bunch of these videos of me and students' phones of where I go right up to the camera and just say, it's, I don't know, let's say like the word although. A lot of students struggle to pronounce that, and like I'll go right to the camera, like, although, and I'll send that footage to them so they can be watching it in their own time, like although, and so they can practice that. Here's one with Chinese students. Tell me if you've noticed the same thing, right? With Chinese students, grammar is amazing, vocabulary is excellent, reading, writing is fantastic, but the fluency, there's like almost no fluency.
What do you mean by that?
I mean, like when it's speaking, it's really like slow, like they struggle to put the sentences together. I find that they've got amazing, in my experience anyway, right? But they tend to have amazing grammar. All the parts of English, maybe the two parts they struggle with is the accent, the pronunciation, and like freely speaking English. Like their time to make responses and stuff is really slow. Have you had noticed anything like that?
And I never thought about that before, but yeah, maybe. I know I think China's number one in like most hours of homework a week. It's like 14 hours or something. And
oh my God.
They study insanely hard. So I think they've got a really good academic knowledge, like they know on paper the rules and stuff, but yeah, practicing probably is harder. Another thing I noticed, which is really fascinating, in Chinese, there's tones.
Yeah.
So you go up and down, it has a different meaning. I hear a lot of, just like as we do when we learn Chinese as English speakers, a lot of Chinese people will kind of carry these tones over to English, where they go up and down at kind of unnatural points. So I find some lessons on like intonation really useful. Like a lot of Chinese people will go up at the end. And when you do that, it kind of sounds a bit awkward because you think they're going to continue when they've actually finished. Like, I'm going to talk and then I go up and then you're waiting.
Yeah, and then
they're actually finished.
The sentence. Yeah, okay. Yeah. I see. That's interesting.
So I noticed that a lot, yeah.
That's good, man. That's good. I've got just a couple of round-off questions for you.
Yeah, let's do it.
So one is, what's your favorite book you've ever read?
That is a fantastic question. I'm a very slow reader.
What's your genre? Fiction, non-fiction?
Always non-fiction.
Same, me also.
Cool. I'm trying to think. I can only think of one that I'm reading right now, which I haven't actually read. I'm reading, and it's really, really small, so I should have finished it. But already it's amazing. It's by Seneca. He's the I guess Roman philosopher.
Yeah, I know Seneca.
And it's what's it called? It's called The Shortness of Life or something like that.
Okay.
So he's talking about people that waste their lives doing nothing, and when you have one life, you have to kind of live it, make the most of it. And it's amazing to think it's such an old book. It's like 2,000 years old, I guess.
Yeah.
But it's so wise and really, really inspiring to read. So haven't finished it yet, but I'm kind of taking my time and enjoying it.
Have you read the Meditations?
I have not. No, it's on my list. I would love to.
Yeah, there's a good one on Audible of the Meditations because it's in plain English. Like I've got the Meditations and I quite liked it, but the written one that I have, it's in like Shakespearean English. They try and make it sound more, I don't know, like authentic and old, but I don't really like the reading in the Shakespearean English.
Harder to like digest, isn't it?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Okay, here's another one for you. What's a piece of advice you've been given that you never forgot?
Oh, that's amazing. I'm really bad at thinking on the spot, so
I'm thinking I should actually start sending these round-off questions to my guests before the podcast so they can actually ponder, because a few people have given me the same response, like, I don't know.
Yeah. It could be a good idea, yeah, because I tend to do that where I might have like a list of questions for my podcast and I'll just send like one hard one that you might have to think about. I can just think of really random pieces of advice. It's not exactly profound or amazing. It's just so random. It's not relevant at all. But like my dad always said to me, because I love hiking, and he always said, like when you have a break, the more breaks you have, the harder the walk becomes, because your body gets used to having a rest and sitting down. So keep the breaks kind of minimal and use your momentum to keep going, up a mountain or whatever.
That's an amazing piece of advice. That's a really good piece of advice. So? Yeah, I think so.
I don't know if it's backed by science, but I found that that's worked for me, yeah, it's totally irrelevant to anything we're talking about.
Yeah, it didn't need to be relevant, but it was a really fascinating piece of advice. And I guess in my next workout, I'll keep that in mind.
Yeah, let me know if it works.
Yeah, cool. I'll try. Last one is, where can people find you?
Oh, that's much easier.
Yeah.
So I have kind of two websites. One is my personal teaching one, which is ewmichael.com, like English with Michael. And there people can have one-to-one lessons or group lessons with me. And then my other website is levelupenglish.school. And this is linked to my podcast, which has the same name. I do podcasts for English learners, Level Up English. And on that website, I've got like online courses and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, two places, two websites.
That's amazing. I've put all of your links in the description of this video. I encourage everyone checks you out. You're clearly a really informed and experienced teacher, and I think a lot of people can benefit from your content. And yeah, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you so much, too. It's been really fun. Thank you.
Thanks, man.